Hey everyone, welcome back. If you love eye-opening stories about justice, leadership, and unexpected twists, you're in for a treat today. Imagine walking into your job every night, exhausted, overworked, and underpaid, knowing that if you complain, your hours might disappear. What if your boss wasn't just demanding, but actively exploiting you, stealing tips, forcing unpaid overtime, and threatening anyone who spoke up? Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, for the employees at this 24-hour diner, it wasn't just a bad job. It was a trap they couldn't escape. But what if someone powerful was watching? What if the person scrubbing dishes next to you wasn't just another worker, but the CEO of the entire company, disguised, undercover, and seeing every injustice firsthand? That's exactly what happened when Nathan Carter, a restaurant chain owner, went undercover in his own business and discovered just how broken things really were. What he found wasn't just inefficiency, it was exploitation, fear, and a toxic manager running the place like a dictatorship. But here's the best part. Nathan wasn't just there to watch, he was there to change everything. Stick around to hear how he exposed the truth and turned a workplace nightmare into a story of justice. Nathan Carter sat in his sleek office, staring at the financial reports from one of his 24-hour diners, his fingers drumming against the desk. The numbers didn't add up. Employee turnover for the night shift had skyrocketed, customer complaints about long wait times were increasing, and overall revenue had dropped significantly. His district managers kept giving him the same excuses. It's just the industry, or no one wants to work nights anymore. But Nathan wasn't buying it. He had built Carter's Diner chain from a single mom-and-pop restaurant into a thriving business with multiple locations, and he knew firsthand that hard work alone didn't drive people away. Something else was happening at that location. Determined to uncover the truth, Nathan made a decision that night. He wouldn't just send another corporate memo or trust a filtered report. He needed to see it for himself. And there was only one way to do that: go undercover. If his employees were struggling, he wanted to understand why, and the only way to get honest answers was to experience their reality firsthand. 2 days later, he stood outside Carter's Diner, midtown, dressed in a worn-out hoodie, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. He had shaved off his well-groomed beard, ditched his luxury watch, and replaced it with a cheap one from a convenience store. No one would recognize him. His visits to individual locations were rare, and most employees had only ever seen his name on memos, not his face. Taking a deep breath, Nathan pushed through the glass doors, greeted by the greasy scent of frying bacon and the low murmur of a near-empty late-night dining room. A tired-looking waitress wiped down a counter, while the lone cook in the open kitchen focused on flipping a stack of pancakes. The energy in the place felt tense, drained, as if everyone inside was running on empty. At the front counter, a bored-looking night manager named Derek barely glanced at him. "You're the new guy?" he asked, disinterested. Nathan nodded, keeping his voice casual. "Yeah, just trying to make some extra cash." "Whatever," Derek muttered, handing him an apron. "Don't slow us down." Nathan had just stepped into their world. Now it was time to see the truth. Nathan tightened the strings of his apron as he stepped into the back of the diner, taking in the dimly lit kitchen and the lingering scent of burnt coffee. The steel countertops were cluttered, the tile floors stained from years of grease buildup, and the flickering fluorescent lights overhead gave the entire place a dull, lifeless glow. He had been in countless restaurant kitchens before, but something about this one felt different. It wasn't just worn down, it was neglected. Before he could take it all in, a voice called out, "New guy over here!" Nathan turned to see Miguel, a line cook in his early 20s, motioning him over to the dishwashing station. Miguel's uniform was slightly stained, his sleeves rolled up to reveal tired arms, and his face carried the look of someone who had been running on fumes for far too long. "Name's Miguel. You ever done dishwashing before?" Nathan shook his head, playing the role of an inexperienced worker. "Not really, but I'll figure it out." Miguel chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, that's what they all say. You got about 5 minutes before the plates start stacking to the ceiling." Nathan grabbed a sponge and got to work, the heat from the industrial sink making his hands raw within minutes. The plates and pans came in faster than he could scrub, and within an hour his arms ached from the constant movement. He stole glances at the other employees, quickly getting a sense of how things operated. Lena, the exhausted waitress, barely had a moment to breathe between serving customers and handling takeout orders. She moved with robotic precision, her face neutral as if she had trained herself not to show how drained she really was. Tony, the janitor, shuffled past with a mop, his steps slow, his back hunched from years of hard labor. The energy in the diner was suffocating, silent, cold, mechanical. No one laughed, no one chatted, no one moved with the lively rhythm he expected from a bustling 24-hour spot. And then there was Derek, the night manager. He barely looked up from his clipboard, barking orders when necessary but offering no real guidance. He walked through the kitchen like a warden, his eyes scanning for mistakes rather than opportunities to help. Nathan could already tell this wasn't just a diner with a staffing problem. This was a place where people had given up. As Nathan settled into the chaotic rhythm of the night shift, he began to notice the cracks beneath the surface, the struggles that couldn't be captured in reports or spreadsheets. It wasn't just exhaustion weighing on the employees. It was something deeper, an unspoken pressure that kept them moving like ghosts through the motions. Nobody complained out loud, but their silence spoke volumes. Lena, the waitress, barely took a break. Nathan watched as she refilled coffee cups, delivered plates, and handled impatient customers with a forced smile, even when her feet wobbled from fatigue. The only moment she paused was to stretch her aching wrists. But the second Derek stepped out of his office, she straightened up, as if afraid he'd notice her slowing down. Nathan casually asked her, "You ever get a break around here?" She gave a tired laugh. "A break? Yeah, sure. When my shift ends, if Derek doesn't force me to stay longer." Miguel, the cook, worked with quiet determination, his movements sharp and efficient, but there was an edge to his expression, a simmering frustration barely contained beneath his calm exterior. "Been here long?" Nathan asked, scrubbing another dish. Miguel sighed, flipping a burger with more force than necessary. 2 years. Supposed to get a raise 6 months ago, but management forgot. Every time I ask, they say they're working on it." He scoffed. "Funny how they never forget to take money from our checks when we're a minute late." Then there was Tony, the janitor, who had been at the diner the longest. He never spoke much, just mopped the floors, emptied the trash, and wiped down tables, his back curving more each time he bent over. When Nathan asked how long he'd been doing this job, Tony simply muttered, "Too damn long." The worst part? No one questioned it anymore. The understaffing, the unpaid overtime, the tip deductions, everyone accepted it as if it were just the way things were, and that was exactly how Derek wanted it. Nathan started seeing the invisible chains Derek had wrapped around his employees, not through direct threats, but through a system of quiet manipulation. Workers were scheduled for extra shifts without warning, and refusing them meant having their hours cut the following week. Overtime pay was always miscalculated, and those who dared to speak up mysteriously found their names disappearing from the schedule. It wasn't just a bad work environment. It was exploitation disguised as business efficiency. And Nathan knew this wasn't going to fix itself. Nathan had suspected that something was wrong, but now he was seeing it firsthand. The diner wasn't just mismanaged. It was a place where abuse thrived under the guise of tough leadership. And at the center of it all was Derek, the night manager. Derek rarely left his office, but when he did, it was only to criticize, belittle, or punish. He never stepped in to help when the rush got overwhelming, never acknowledged the workers' exhaustion. Instead, he hovered like a vulture, waiting for mistakes. Nathan saw it happen when Lena spilled a glass of soda while rushing between tables. She barely had time to reach for a rag before Derek stormed over, his voice sharp enough to make customers turn their heads. "Are you serious? You think we can afford to waste supplies because you can't keep your hands steady?" Lena's face paled as she wiped up the mess in silence, swallowing her frustration. No apology, no defense, just quiet submission. Nathan clenched his jaw. He wanted to step in, but he needed to see just how far Derek would go. Then there was Miguel's warning. The kitchen had gotten slammed with late-night customers, and Miguel, already exhausted from covering extra shifts, was working as fast as he could. But when an order took too long, Derek stormed into the kitchen, slamming a plate onto the counter. "You think this is a charity? Get it together or I'll find someone who will." Miguel said nothing, his grip tightening around the spatula, but Nathan saw the tension in his shoulders. the sheer resentment burning behind his exhaustion. The worst moment came when Tony, the janitor, struggled to lift a trash bin that was too heavy for one person. Nathan was about to help when Derek appeared, arms crossed, watching Tony struggle. "Hurry up, old man. If you're too slow, maybe it's time I cut your hours." Nathan had seen enough. This wasn't just a bad manager. This was a bully who thrived on fear, who drained every ounce of energy from his workers just to make himself feel in control. And yet no one pushed back. Nathan finally understood why the turnover rate was so high. It wasn't just the workload, it was the abuse. And if Derek thought no one was watching, he was dead wrong. Nathan had spent enough time watching, listening, and enduring. Now it was time to act. But if he wanted to make real change, he couldn't just storm in and demand answers. He needed to strike at the root of the problem. The final straw came when Miguel approached Derek after the rush, once again asking about his overdue raise. Nathan stood close enough to hear, pretending to scrub a counter. "I've been here 2 years, man. You promised me a raise months ago." Derek didn't even look up from his clipboard. "Yeah, well, we're tight on budget. Maybe if you worked faster, we'd have more money to spare." Miguel's fists clenched, but he bit his tongue. Nathan had seen that reaction too many times in this diner, the moment when a worker realized they had no power, that pushing back would only make things worse. And then Derek leaned in with a smirk. "If you don't like it, you can leave, but good luck finding another job that'll take you." That was it. Nathan's decision was final. This wasn't just about mismanagement or laziness. This was calculated abuse, a system built to break people down and keep them desperate. He couldn't wait any longer. Nathan glanced around at the exhausted faces in the kitchen, at Lena rubbing her temples between orders, at Tony struggling to mop the floor. They had accepted this mistreatment for too long because they thought they had no other choice. But tomorrow they would see that they did. Nathan wiped his hands on his apron and took a deep breath. Tomorrow night, he wouldn't be coming back as the new guy. Tomorrow night he was coming back as their boss. The next night, Nathan walked into the diner, but this time he wasn't wearing an apron. Gone were the faded hoodie and scuffed sneakers. He had swapped them for a sharp dark blazer and crisp dress shirt. He moved with purpose, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. The workers barely noticed him at first, too caught up in their usual routine of grinding through another exhausting shift. But as he stepped onto the floor and cleared his throat, the entire diner fell into a stunned silence. Miguel, standing behind the grill, froze mid-flip of a burger. Lena, who had been balancing a tray of drinks, nearly dropped it. Tony, the janitor, gripped his mop tighter, staring like he was seeing a ghost. They weren't the only ones who noticed. Derek's office door swung open. The night manager strode out, irritation already painted across his face. "What the hell is going on out here?" he snapped, eyes locking onto Nathan. But then recognition dawned, and his confident sneer twisted into something else. Panic. Nathan held his ground, his voice calm but firm. "I'm Nathan Carter. I own this place." The words hit like a thunderclap. A few gasps broke out among the workers. Miguel exhaled sharply, realization flickering in his eyes. Lena pressed a hand to her chest as if trying to steady her breath. Tony, always the quiet one, gave the smallest of nods, as if he had suspected something all along. But Derek wasn't ready to back down. I don't know what kind of game you're playing," he stammered, trying to regain control. "But if you have a problem, you should have come to me directly." Nathan cut him off with a stare. "I did come to you. I came as a worker, and I saw everything. The unpaid overtime, the threats, the way you treat these people like they're disposable." He stepped forward, voice cold. "You're done, Derek. You're fired." The room held its breath. Derek's face flushed red as he sputtered, but Nathan didn't wait for an argument. He turned to the employees instead. "Things are changing, starting tonight." For the first time, hope flickered in their exhausted eyes. The moment Derek stormed out, slamming the diner's door behind him, the entire room remained frozen, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. But Nathan wasn't here to make empty promises. He was here to rebuild. He turned to the employees, their wary eyes filled with disbelief. "First things first," he said, his tone steady but firm. "Overtime is no longer forced. If you don't want the extra hours, you won't be punished for it." A murmur rippled through the staff, a mix of shock and cautious hope. Nathan continued, "Tips will be counted and distributed fairly. No more deductions. No more money disappears before it reaches your pockets." He saw Lena blink rapidly, her hand clenching into a fist like she was trying to hold back emotion. He wasn't done. "Equipment repairs will be prioritized. Miguel, you mentioned that the grill and fryers haven't been properly maintained. That changes now." Miguel exhaled, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Nathan turned to Tony, the janitor. "You shouldn't be lifting heavy bins by yourself. From now on, extra hands will be assigned to help with closing tasks. And speaking of shifts," he looked around the room, making eye contact with each worker, "scheduling will be fair. No one will be punished for asking for a night off." The silence that followed wasn't just stunned. It was transformational. These people had been so conditioned to expect nothing that they didn't know how to process the fact that things were actually changing. Then he made one final announcement. "Until we hire a new manager, Miguel, you're stepping up as shift supervisor." Miguel's head snapped up. "Me?" Nathan nodded. "You know the struggles, you know what needs to change, and more importantly, you care." Lena was the first to break the silence. A quiet clap, hesitant at first but soon followed by others. A slow but growing wave of realization spread through the room. For the first time in a long time, they weren't just surviving another shift. They were being heard. The diner felt different now. The air, once thick with exhaustion and silent resentment, had shifted. It wasn't an immediate transformation. No one expected years of mistreatment to vanish overnight, but there was something new in the atmosphere. Hope. Nathan stayed for a while after his announcement, talking to the employees one-on-one, making sure their voices were heard. Lena finally allowed herself to smile, an exhausted but genuine expression. Miguel, still stunned by his new role, shook his head in disbelief but accepted the challenge with a quiet determination. Even Tony, the quietest of them all, straightened his back just a little, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Over the next few weeks, the changes took root. Schedules became fairer, equipment was repaired, and the oppressive fear of losing shifts disappeared. With Derek gone, the employees weren't just working to survive, they were working with purpose. Nathan didn't just walk away after making promises. He visited regularly, ensuring that the changes weren't temporary fixes but lasting improvements. He even checked in on his other locations, determined to never let this level of neglect go unnoticed again. One evening as he walked through the diner, he saw something small but meaningful. Lena, who once moved through her shifts like a ghost, was laughing at something Miguel said while pouring coffee for a customer. Tony had a younger worker helping him carry supplies, and Miguel, no longer just another overworked cook, was giving instructions with a confidence that hadn't been there before. Nathan exhaled, feeling something settle within him. This wasn't just about fixing policies or firing one bad manager. This was about restoring dignity to the people who kept his business running. And finally, after too long, they had it back. The story of Nathan Carter's undercover experience at his diner highlights a powerful lesson. True leadership isn't about profits or authority, it's about people. Nathan built his business from the ground up, but he realized that success on paper meant nothing if the workers who kept it running were suffering. By stepping into their world, he saw firsthand the struggles that corporate reports never captured: exhaustion, fear, and silent resignation. One of the biggest takeaways is that a toxic work environment doesn't happen by accident. It happens when leadership prioritizes numbers over human well-being. Derek, the night manager, had created a culture where fear kept employees compliant, where speaking up meant punishment, and where workers were treated as expendable. But once Nathan took action, listened, and made changes that actually mattered, everything shifted. The story teaches us that real change starts at the top. Good leadership isn't just about making rules. It's about understanding the struggles of the people who carry the business forward. When employees feel respected and valued, morale improves, performance rises, and the entire workplace transforms. In the end, success isn't just measured in profits. It's measured in how you treat the people who make that success possible.